You're listening to The Knowledge Spot, your number one resource for sharing information that promotes success, personal development, and happiness. I'm your host, Jared Cherry, and my goal is to shed a light on the strategies, mindsets, and routines that have led to each of my guests' individual success. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen, and I hope you enjoy what we have in store. Hi, everyone, and thank you for listening to this episode of The Knowledge Spot. If you are hearing some bassy noises in the background, that is the beautiful instrument known as the drum kit, because today for my guest, I've got Jared Falk. And Jared, am I right to say, is that a bass drum I heard kicking around there?
You are absolutely right. That's the beauty of working in a studio that's designed to record drums. Is we always hear drums here. They're very hard to isolate.
Yes, of course, and the audience members are going to be graced with the constant thumping of a bass drum. Don't worry, it's not too loud or anything, and it's just
okay.
Funny. You know what's really funny about this interview right now, Jared, is I'm literally just coming off wrapping up a podcast with Casey Cooper.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and we had no idea, like, it was just kind of like, a third degree of separation kind of thing. I was like, wait, you're with Drumeo?
Yeah.
And I'm interviewing Jared in like a couple hours. And yeah, it's
Casey's awesome, man. I've been following him for years, and I followed him right kind of when he was just getting started, and then to see him kind of grow, and now he's like one of the most viewed and followed drummers on YouTube, and he's just super hardworking and nice guy. So we love working with him.
That's exactly what we were talking about, because I, too, followed him at a similar time. And I just want to give some audience some perspective here. So, Jared, if you haven't figured out yet, Jared Falk is an amazing drummer, but he is also an extremely talented entrepreneur. And it's very interesting to me to say that you were following Casey from the early years, because I was on YouTube when it launched, and I have very fond memories of your drum videos. I believe they were posted under the moniker of freedrumlessons.com at the time. I don't think you were Drumeo yet. But this right. is probably like 2006. Am I right there? 2006, 2007?
Yeah, 2006.
Yeah, I can recall, I was on YouTube from the get-go. I'm a tech nerd like that. And drumming, your videos would be one of the ones that come up, and a guy called Asaf Sui, who I never see anymore, unfortunately. He was like a showman drummer. But that's why I find it so fascinating that even you, at that point, so I'm pretty sure Casey, we were talking about this earlier, I found him around 2011, 2012. So you would have been in the game, in the YouTube game at that. I know you were doing other things even before that, but you would have been on YouTube for a good 6 years at this point. So you constantly scouring for talent? Is that how it happened? Or is this just you love drumming? I happened to look up drumming at this time, and there's Casey Cooper?
It's both, man. Like I'm always out there looking for, who's the next great teacher, who's the next great, player that's going to come out and start publishing stuff online. And so, yeah, he kind of came along and totally exploded. So it was great.
And it's worth noting that when you say you're looking for who could be a great teacher and player, this is because your company, Drumeo, is essentially an online school, is how I seem to understand it. Am I right there? Is it basically an online music school?
Yeah, I would say, like, it's not a traditional school. Like, when people call it that, I would say, that's what we'd call something like Berkeley or, other popular music schools. Like, there's MIT, like the Musicians Institute and stuff. But for Drumeo, I would more call it like an online community, like a place where a bunch of like-minded people get together who just love playing drums. Some of them want to play drums as a job and make it a career, and many of them, actually the majority, just really love playing just as a hobby, and it's just something they like to do in their spare time. And so it's really just a tight-knit community of like-minded people.
Interesting. And I actually want to delve into a bit of what you just said right there, the whole that you have some people under your employment who are hobbyists and some who are either professional drummers or want to be a professional drummer. And I'm wondering then, do you see a difference in drive, passion, when you employ someone who wants to be a drummer versus someone who is a drummer and is happy where they are as it is now?
Like, well, you're talking. Are you talking about employees, or are you talking about students who sign up for the service?
Okay, so I misunderstood you there. You were referring to the entire community. I was thinking about it from your point.
Yeah, from when it comes to like the instructors, like a guy like Casey, he definitely wants to play drums for a living, and he's doing a great job of that, right? Our other instructors, most of them are the same. Like most of them play drums for a living, and that's kind of their main gig. Like yesterday, we just hosted Rich Redmond, and he drums for the Jason Aldean band, and definitely a full-time drummer. And prior to that, we hosted Daniel Glass, who's a full-time teacher and plays for many different groups in New York. And so, yeah, from the teacher perspective, it's mostly full-time drummers, and from the student perspective, it's a little bit of both. People who want to play full-time, some people who play full-time, and then a lot of hobbyists.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I completely misunderstood you there. I was going, how can you have teachers like on a website of this quality who they don't even want to be drummers? But I get what you're saying now.
Sorry.
No worries. One thing, we've had a few professional musicians on the podcast now, and a few professional musicians / entrepreneurs, and I always like to ask them the benefits of music. And this is because a lot of my listeners may not be musicians, may not dream of being professional musicians or even care of doing that, but perhaps would like to pursue an instrument as a hobby, like you said. And I'm wondering, are there any immediate benefits you can think of from pursuing music just as a hobby?
Well, from a drumming perspective, there's many great reasons to start playing drums. You know, even if you don't have aspirations to be like a touring drummer, you know, riding in a big tour bus and stuff like that, there's lots of benefits. Like it's with drumming, it's very like physically intensive, and so it's almost like a little bit of a workout. And there's many things you can do where you'll break a sweat. It really helps develop your coordination. It helps improve your memory because you're constantly having to memorize songs. It's something you can do alone, so you can just practice on your own, practice the songs, or it's something you can do where you can get together with a group of people and you can jam that way. And so it's really something that's you can do many different ways. And I always say to people, like, when it comes to like sports or drums, a lot of sports, you can't do that when you get into your 50s. Like you can't play football forever. Your body is just gonna be done. Whereas drums, you see these videos and stuff of drummers playing into their 70s, 80s, 90s. Like it's really something that you can do for a long time, and it helps keep your body in shape and your mind in check.
Definitely. It's certainly a physical instrument, obviously. And if I could even take it beyond the realm of the drum kit for a second, just because there might be listeners who are interested in pursuing something else, one of the major benefits I noticed from when I started studying music theory, so a broader overview of music, was an improvement in my mathematics, as weird as that sounds. And just to give people some perspective here, when I started learning music theory, I had been drumming for a good 10 years up to that point. So I was one of those garage band drummers, right? And eventually I went to school for music and I was forced to learn theory. And I was amazed at I was a horrible math student in high school, and nowadays I've been going through. There's an amazing website called Khan Academy, and my math skills, when I signed up for it earlier this year, they put me at like grade 5 level math or something, and I've been teaching myself the math I should know at this point in my life, and it's really cool how I can see the benefit of studying music theory, which is essentially applying math to sound. If you ask me what music is in general, in my opinion, it is organized sound, and we organize it through mathematics, or rhythm, if you want to call it that way. So it's this sounds like a real kind of pitch for a music school, but I don't own my own music school. I just know that I meet people every day who tell me, I'm thinking about playing an instrument, but it's like expensive, and what's the point, and blah 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 blah. And I'm going, first of all, beyond the expression you'll have from playing an instrument, that mode of expression and the happiness you'll have, there are definitely some mindful and physical benefits from the pursuit of music.
Definitely. There's a technical side where we get into, studying the theory, the time signatures and all the note values and stuff like that. And that can be really fun to do that because it's quantifiable, right? When you're getting better because you know what you didn't know before, and you know what you know now. I don't know if that makes sense, but
right. No, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, with music though, there's also like that emotional side, that artistic side, where it's like some stuff you just play, you don't even know how you played this or why you played it. You don't even know how you learned it, but it just comes out of you naturally, and that's such a cool feeling, especially from I'm a teacher here at Drumeo as well, and to see students kind of have that experience when they play something that they didn't even know they could play. It's super exciting for them, and it's just a really cool experience as an educator.
I know exactly what you mean. I teach students myself as well, and I always love stumbling across those students who have natural talent but didn't realize it. I always find that amazing. It's just like you said, you'd be telling them, show me something, and they're jamming, and they play this great fill, and you're like, that was awesome. Where'd you learn that from? And the guy says, I don't know, I just did it now. And you're going, oh, so there's something almost natural to that kind of playing.
Yeah, exactly. It's from the development of vocabulary and the development of technique and theory. People don't realize it sometimes, but when they practice certain things, there's also like residual benefits, right? So if you practice theory, that might naturally just come out in a drum fill or a drum beat that you create on the spot that you never knew you could play. And so that's the cool thing about studying music, is that technical side really brings out that emotional and artistic side, and that's exciting.
Yeah, and you have to, in my opinion at least, and feel free to disagree, I think it's a very delicate balance, especially as a drummer, of that technical side with the emotional side, and bringing them both together and not to be too overwhelming or too focused on just one.
Yeah, I had this point in my drumming life where I studied technique like crazy, and I felt my musicianship and my artistic side, like my creativity, really dropped. And I was playing with bands, and I wasn't liking what I was playing, even though I was practicing more than ever, and my technique was better than ever. Like I could play really fast, but so then I had to really kind of shift gears and say, okay, I need to just like scale back on the technical side and really just start using this vocabulary and helping it try and come out in a more natural way. And that type of thing applies to anything. Like it can apply to guitar, it can apply to piano, it can apply to graphic design, or it can apply to any industry. It's really good to have a healthy balance of the technique and then the creativity.
I agree completely, and I would love to hear your opinion on this. So, like I said, sometimes I'll get students who have a natural talent, and other times I will get students who I'm only going to include good students here. So for a lot of people, this might even catch them off guard that I'm going to include people who don't necessarily have natural talent at music as a good student. But I find that my good students fall into these two categories rather. So the natural talent, and then really like the good mathematicians, the good students, the good workers, the hard people, like the people who are working hard. And I've had students ask me, if I don't have the natural talent, like, these are the people who often have difficulty. If you tell them just to jam, that's where they struggle. Whereas you tell them read this chart and sight read, they're fine. They'll ask me, how do I learn this? How do I learn this innate ability to understand music if I'm not born to it? Do you have any suggestions for these kind of people?
Yeah, well, I think that's a product of their environment. And when it comes to natural talent, that's like a very delicate subject. And sometimes I look at people who say, oh, this guy's just so naturally talented, he can't not be good at drums. Look at a guy like Tony Royster Jr. We just had him, we just launched a master class with him at Drumeo, and he drums for Jay-Z and many, many other famous artists. But there's videos of him when he's 11 years old, just absolutely shredding on the drums. And everyone looks at him and says, man, he's just such a natural talent, and he was just destined to be good. But no one really looks at, when he was 3 years old, we hear him telling stories about him sleeping in his dad's guitar case while his dad was in rehearsal. And it's like the music is just being like fed to him, like constantly spoon fed. And so he's really became a product of that environment, of just like, he really had no other choice but to become a drummer and become a musician, because it was just like woven into his DNA. Whereas, some other people who, let's say they don't have as much natural talent, really just didn't have that same environment. And so it's not that they don't have the natural talent or they don't have the ability to get really good. It's just their path to that result might be a little bit different. And that's hard to try and explain to people, because they just kind of look at the end result of this other amazing drummer and be like, how, they don't realize that he practiced a ton. He was in the practice room for 5 to 8 hours to 10 hours a day, and then sleeping in guitar cases while his dad rehearsed, since he was 3 years old. So there's so much more that goes into someone who's at that super high level. And so yeah, the whole natural talent thing, I can debate that on either side. But today, I don't know where I stand.
No, it's a very difficult question to grasp. It comes back to that nature versus nurture idea. And I really loved your answer where to me, talent is the most overrated thing in the whole world, and we live in first world countries where people think that just because they're so talented and their parents can afford to buy them music lessons that they are God's gift to earth and they don't have to practice and blah 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 blah. And those are my least favorite kind of students, and I imagine you might feel the same way, at least in some ways. And I love how you're saying how this natural talent, so it might not even be natural. It might be a continuously learned through environment or through parenting. It's this constantly ingrained thing. It's hard to really like quantize and put it in physically because I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's accumulation of hearing your dad practice because you're sleeping in his guitar case or tapping your feet because you're bored in class, but it seems to be really a combination of all these things with maybe a little bit of, yeah, you're born rhythmically, and then at the same time it's, did your mom play Beethoven to you when you were in the womb,
Yeah, headphones over the belly and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's just woven into their DNA, but it's not something that like they had to have that environment, otherwise they wouldn't just have this. Like if they were just kind of born on an island without their parents or with a completely different environment, I don't think a guy like Tony Royster would have been able to just, you show him a drum set, I don't think he would have just been able to play drums naturally. I think it was something that was learned, and it was a process that happened over time, and that anyone can have that process. It just might be a little bit different.
Exactly. And to answer my own question, because you did, I'm gonna framework it again. So for the listeners who are, maybe you're that kind of musician who, like I said, you have trouble just jamming. So if you're sitting at your kit or your saxophone or whatever, and you got three of your friends over and they go, show me what you can do, and that's where you really kind of like freeze up. I often tell my students to, I ask them, how much music do you listen to? And they go, oh, well, like on my iPod on the bus, and like anyone else. And I go, well, that's the key to learning how to jam is to, put down your practice book, put down your rudiments, and play or listen. Play or listen. Make that environment musical, like you were saying before.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and be yourself. I think a lot of times that students who have troubles just jamming kind of get caught up trying to play something that they read on a piece of paper, or trying to play something that someone else taught them, when in reality they just need to focus on their own voice and just play something. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. Don't be afraid to crash and burn. I think the more that we crash and burn as musicians, the more we actually learn. And I was very lucky to get started when I was 15 and start getting gigs right away and I got thrown to the wolves very, very early.
Yeah.
And so that taught me so much, because I crash and burn so many times. And those situations, you learn way more in those situations than you learn in the times when you're just like right on point, playing perfectly, and everything sounds great. I like the situations where I get to learn, and those are where I grow the most.
It's so true. It's necessary for growth, that kind of failure, especially in a performance art like drumming or any kind of music, or I guess performance art, where you're on a stage and you're performing, and all of a sudden you don't just have to worry about, am I playing the music right? You have to worry about, is the lighting set up right? Am I burning up in here? Should I tell them to move it a little bit? Is my click working? Is the bass player in the right tune? Is the audience looking at me and hating what I'm doing? There's so many other things going on, and you kind of just got to focus and be yourself, like you said, and play.
Exactly. Yeah. Communicate in your own voice, in your own style. And I think, who did I hear this? I think it was Stephen Taylor, one of our Drumeo instructors, and he has his own website as well. But he said, like, the world doesn't need another Tony Williams or Thomas Lang or Benny Greb. The world needs another you, whoever you are. And so really focus on being yourself, and have influences, but just really focus on being yourself and trying to find your own voice.
Exactly. And for people who are going, how do I find my old voice? This is a trick that I've been using for a long time now, and it's just so effective, because we kind of grow up in a society where we're taught to think that, you're born knowing who you are. And in my experience, at least, that is so far from the case. It's been years of failures and successes and trying new things to finally discover, oh, I like this, oh, I don't like this. And really, when you break it down, it's only common sense, right? Like, how could you know you like something till you try it? How can you know what speaks true to you till you've done it?
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm as a drummer, I'm still trying to find my sound, and as an entrepreneur, I'm still trying to figure out where I fit best and stuff. And I'm learning more as I get older, but it's definitely still a process that I don't think will ever end.
Exactly, it's a constant thing, and just to clarify what I was saying before, the technique I've used, I've heard it from Chick Corea. There's an interview where he said, or where someone's asking him, how did you become Chick Corea? How did you become this great musician? And he said straight up, I started off by copying people, by taking inspiration, not trying to be them, but trying to play the things that I enjoyed them playing, and eventually, through time, putting my own flavors on these things.
Yeah, exactly. And I did a video a while ago where it's like the most important tip, or I don't forget what I called it, but because we have so many great artists coming through here who've played on like Rich Redmond was in, he's been on sold 20 million albums, so they've had really hit mass appeal. And each one of these guys, it's the same thing what they tell you to do, and that is just listen, and from there, that's where you gain inspiration, and then you eventually kind of find your own sound based out of all that different inspiration.
Exactly, and it's so empowering to know that the real key to pursuing anything is just to try it, and then if you approach it in that sense, you really don't have much to lose, because failing is inherently a part of trying something, unfortunately or fortunately enough.
Yeah, exactly.
So Jared, where I want to take this podcast now is I want to take us back to the year 2006. I'm browsing YouTube. I find freedrumlessons.com. At least I think that's what it was under. And you're teaching me how to do a single roll on the snare drum with one drumstick, stuff like that. And I'm wondering, what I always loved about your videos was you were putting information on the web, which it was kind of big in 2006, but not really, especially in video format. You could buy people's DVDs and like get them mailed to you, right? So you're putting this information out there for free, hence the name freedrumlessons.com. And what was your rationale behind this? Because a lot of people would say what you were giving out for free, you could have easily charged for.
Oh.
Hey, Jared, sorry about that.
That's all right. I don't know if it was on my end or yours. But...
I think it was my end. That's never happened before. It's odd. I just got some connection problems. Okay. So what I was asking you, though, is I'm wondering the rationale behind these videos you were releasing for free when you could have easily been charging money for some of these things.
Well, at that time, we had started in 2002, and we uploaded some videos onto our website, and we sold these digital downloads on eBay. And then from there, in 2005, we published our first DVD, and then we published a few more, and we got to the point where we're like, okay, where is this going to go? Are we just going to be another DVD publisher? Because there's lots of people kind of doing that. Like there's Hal Leonard and Hudson Music and Alfred. They're all publishing DVDs, and so we wanted to kind of figure out what is the next step. Like where is online education actually going to be going? And back then I had a business partner, a great guy who's I'm still chat with to this day, named Rick Kettner, and me and him had the idea to do a website that taught a ton of drum lessons, and everything was free, and it was just created just to build goodwill. Like it started with no advertising, nothing. It was just the website was just nice. It was actually looked really nice because there was no like horrible banner ads or anything. So we did that, and we were we were definitely the first to do this like huge library of videos. There's been many people now trying to create their own kind of free drum lessons, but it kind of turned into this huge community, and then the website was it's getting upwards of 10 to 20,000 people coming to it a day, and 20,000 to 30,000 people viewing the videos every day on YouTube, and it just kind of blew up into something much bigger than we could have even dreamed that it did. And I think that's the whole mantra of just wanting to give more than you receive, right? Like obviously we need to make money for this to sustain and stuff, but we really want to build like equity when it comes to our students. Like I don't want to feel like they're giving me more than I'm giving them. I always want to be on the side of us just really kind of over delivering on everything. And so that relates to like people who are consuming our lessons just on YouTube for absolutely free, and that also transfers over to people who sign up and pay for a service through our website now. And so the same principle applies now as applied back then, is just really try and build goodwill and do good by the community, and then people will stand by you regardless of what you do.
I find that fascinating, and it's when I was talking with Casey, we were talking about his YouTube channel, and I asked him, I said, when you started your channel, did you approach it as the senses where I want to be famous, I want to make money for my drumming videos and blah blah blah? And he said yes at first, and then he quickly realized that, just like you're saying, when he changed his mindset from approaching it from a selfish point of view to instead doing it from a place of giving, he found that success quickly followed that way.
Yeah, you give expecting nothing in return, and I find a lot of times these days people will give, but then you kind of feel like they want you to reciprocate somehow, and if that is the intention, I think it'll just all crash and burn, because people can see that, right? If I think you just need to be transparent and open, and if the stuff is free, it's free. Here it is, and you're okay to ask them to buy something at some point, but it can't be like, hey, I gave you that free stuff, now you owe it to me to buy this, right? That type of mindset doesn't work.
I agree. And so what I'm wondering then, if we're going back to these years when you guys are posting a ton of free content, I imagine whether it was your parents or your grandparents or people who would have witnessed, maybe your friends even, people who would have witnessed you spending as much time as I imagine it would have taken to make all this content and then put it out for free, are they telling you, why are you doing this? Why are you wasting your time? Or were people 100% behind you?
No, they were not. They supported, but people looked at what we were doing and they're like, okay, so how do you make money? That was always the question. And I was like, well, no, don't worry about that yet. You gotta just like build goodwill and really focus on helping people. And then as we continually to develop new products and stuff like that, when we do present these people with those products, they will likely buy, and that's what happened. And so I think now everyone's kind of come around, and everyone understands now, if you want to sell anything online, you kind of got to build value first. That's like a very common marketing technique, is first kind of help people solve a problem, and then once they get to the end of that problem, now they probably have another issue that they want solved, and that's when you try and make the sale, right? That's like a common marketing technique online, and so we just kind of took it to the next level by like providing hundreds of videos.
Interesting. I'm just getting a little wrapped up in that nice drum beat that's going on now.
Sorry, man. I had no idea there was a lesson at this time. It's like,
it's okay. It's okay. It's beautiful. There's that nice beat going on. It's so funny to me when you said the question that you were asked, so how are you going to make money? Because when I started this podcast, and still to this day, what I'm constantly asked by people who don't even understand, what's happening behind the scenes with this podcast, all they want to ask me is, so how much are you making? How many subscribers do you have? They want these like, and I'm the same way as you. I'm telling you, I don't care. At this point, I'm doing this because I love to do this, and obviously when money comes, it'll be an amazing side effect. If it does come, if it doesn't, it's just, this was never my intention was to monetize this. I like to think that I'm approaching this the same way you did with free drum lessons. Is I want to help people, and I think if you have that ideal in mind, I think success might be a likely side effect.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The first kind of motive cannot be financial gain. I think if that is, then especially when it comes to education and stuff, people will see that, and if they think all you want is money, they're not going to want you to be their teacher. Like, that's just not a good teacher. I've had private instructors when you go to them and they want you to pay before the lesson starts, and it's like, what? Pay? You kind of feel like cheap. Like, why does this guy not wait till the end of the lesson first? And that's kind of what a lot of people do online, like in all the education industry. So yeah, we just first provide value, help people, and then naturally it will hopefully come back to us. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But in this case, it's done really, really well for us.
And I think you just pointed out a great tip for beginner musicians looking to start music lessons, if your teacher asks you to pay before you've even finished a lesson with him or her, red flag should be going on and off constantly.
Yeah, well, it's more like how they would do it. Like if you get into the room and they're just like, okay, pay up. I understand, like if you want to like give posted checks or whatever, but
Right.
that's a little bit excessive.
I agree. I'm happy you brought this topic up because music education in general is one of a huge issue in music in North America, and I can only speak for Canada to be honest, but in Toronto specifically. But I'm curious to ask you, do you guys have as many shitty music teachers in your area as we do here?
Shitty music teachers are everywhere. That's why, like, I ask a lot of our students who sign up to Drumeo, like, why did you sign up? And it's like, well, I took lessons from this guy, but he was just horrible, horrible experience. I wanted to learn this, and he wouldn't teach it to me. And he was always rushing through the lesson, or he just talked the whole time and didn't actually help me do anything. That's like a super common in the industry.
Do you have any like telltale signs of a good music teacher? Something that lets you know this guy's legit?
Well, the best is to get a recommendation from someone else, and that's what I always did when I was growing up. I took lessons from around 10 different teachers within the first 2 years. But that, and then just kind of like gauge the lesson at the end of that lesson. Like, how do you feel? Do you feel like you learned something? And you can decide for yourself really quickly whether or not you connect with the teacher. And not every student will connect with every teacher. I think that some teachers are better suited to different kinds of students. And so it's all about, finding the one that works for you.
That's very true, and I would stress listeners who are interested in pursuing music, and don't play this waiting game of looking for the perfect teacher. The waiting game is a huge trap in my experience. Just try. If you see a guy on Kijiji who's charging $30, it seems kind of sketchy, but it fits your price range, you know nothing about him other than that, give it a shot. See what happens. Just try stuff. Don't wait for these perfect opportunities to happen because, when you go looking for something, chances are you won't find it, that old saying.
Yeah.
It seems to be true of a lot of things. Just pull the trigger and try stuff out. You'll decide for yourself eventually whether or not you want to continue with said teacher.
Exactly. And at Drumeo, we launched something a while ago that it's called Drumeo for Teachers, and it's this whole directory for private teachers. And a lot of these teachers, they have gotten approved by us. So we've actually spoken to them and asked them about their curriculum and about their philosophies behind education. And so certain teachers have certain badges, and so that they're approved by us. And that's common in other instruments as well. Like there's other websites that host guitar teachers and piano teachers and voice teachers, and basically you can learn anything online now, right?
Right.
And so a lot of that information is out there. If you just want to search for a teacher, you can find reviews and stuff.
Interesting. And can I flip the question around to you for a second? So we just talked about a good teacher. I want to know from you, what are some traits that a good student has? In case any of my listeners are harping on becoming the best student they can be, what should they be doing?
Well, the biggest thing is being honest with your teacher about how much practice that you have and you can get in. Because I know a lot of times when I was teaching privately more, I would assign a bunch of stuff for my students, and they didn't tell me that they had no time to practice this next week or whatever. And so then I would gauge or I'd give them a different lesson plan if I knew that they only had 30 minutes a day, or if they had an hour a day, I'd give them a little bit more. And so you got to really be honest about that. Another thing a student needs to be honest about is exactly what they want to learn, like what their goals are. I've had some students come in and they say, hey, I want to become a full-time drummer. I just had a private student like that. He's at music school now. And so we worked on a lot of different things than even just drumming, because he said, I want to become a full-time drummer in the music business. We actually worked on some business stuff as well, because that's part of my background as well. And I think I can add a lot of value to students on that front. And so just be very, very honest with your teacher and share with them exactly what your goals are. So if you just want to be a hobbyist, then share that. And then you maybe don't need to work on all the really technical theory or the really, really complex technique. You could just work on playing songs and doing things that you really enjoy and love.
Exactly, and I think it's worth noting that, at least in my experience, you're going to have some students who legit don't know what they want to do yet, and that's fine as long as you're honest too. Because I sympathize. You know, when I started drumming, I didn't know where I wanted to take it. I just knew I wanted to learn the drums, and slowly but surely you'll figure out what you want to do just by trying it out again.
Yeah, and a good teacher will see that. Like when I was teaching my students, I had a piano there because I play piano as well, and I know some students just love just jamming because they don't get a chance to jam with another musician. So many of the times our lessons were just us jamming, and I would say, hey, let's go from the verse to the chorus and really try and like take it up on the chorus. And so it wasn't even that I was we were doing like rudimental exercises or I was assigning them stuff for next week. It was really just us hanging out and communicating as musicians. And so that's like a completely different lesson style. And I think a good teacher will really kind of figure out what works best for each student.
Exactly, and that jamming is in my practice that's been so crucial. Like that's my favorite kind of practice before a gig. It's just getting used to, testing out my ear really, as opposed to like working on charts and stuff like that. I like before a gig I like to play with some musicians and just test my ear out, like I'm saying, see like how am I going to react to certain cadences and rhythms. What am I going to do based on my training so far?
Yeah, exactly.
So again, I want to take this back to the whole Drumeo, the YouTube, the online marketing, because again, what impressed me the most with you, Jared, is just how much I've seen you and your brand take off. When you started on YouTube, you weren't small, I would say, because quite honestly, you kind of monopolized the drum learning online at the time. There really wasn't much else to go to. I think we had like eHow had like every so often like a random drumming video. I don't even know if those guys are still around. But you would look up drum lesson and free drum lessons would be the stuff that comes up.
Yeah.
Is this something you were aware of? Did you see a void in the marketplace? Were you just privy to the fact that YouTube started, I am going to devour this thing?
No, like when we first started, and this is much more on the business side, but we started by selling our product and promoting our product by buying advertising. So we bought Google Ads. And over time, Google Ads became more and more expensive. And they had more restrictions on what you could promote, and they were kind of like telling us how we can run our business, and we didn't really like that. So we said we got to diversify our strategy. And so what we did is we launched the whole free drum lessons, and we really started working on search engine optimization and affiliate marketing and all that kind of stuff. And the search engine optimization is the reason why you see a lot of our stuff everywhere when you do searches, is that certain lessons and certain pages are designed to rank and come up for search terms when you search for them. And the main premise behind that is if you search for something like drum lessons or how to play drums or rock drumming or something like that, that whatever we provide to you, like whatever video you see, it actually really delivers on the value. So you watch it and you get exactly what you searched for. And Google loves that because that makes them look good because they served you the perfect result. And we like that because it gives you the exact result that you wanted, and you will credit that result to us as teachers and us as a brand. And so that was kind of our mindset behind that. It was a lot of people try and they do these funky tactics like, oh, I'm going to buy a bunch of links and I'm going to pay for people to send their traffic to my video. And it's like, well, those people might not even like your video or might not even want it. And if you don't deliver, then people are just going to click back and your content won't really get any traction. And so it just comes from a mindset of creating content that solves problems for people and that really delivers results.
Exactly. The content's got to be golden. And I'm wondering, can you offer any specific tips in terms of marketing that content in the online world today?
Well, first of all, you got to know who you're actually trying to reach. And so for us, it took us a long time to figure out, who is our actual customer? Who are we creating these videos for? And that's kind of who we tailor those videos around. So in the past, we would name our customer and we would have a whole customer story. And that's kind of how we that's kind of the baseline we use to promote our website and to promote our videos. But when it comes to marketing the videos, just try and create something that's really unique and something that people really, really want to share. So on YouTube, like if you look at Casey, he creates these super entertaining videos with popular songs. People love listening to the original songs, and then he does some, very, very like it's entertaining to watch. All the stick spins, and he just really enjoys playing the drums, and it's kind of infectious when you watch it.
Right.
And people like that, right? And that's something that people will see and be like, oh, I got to share this with this drummer. Even a non-musician would like that because it's so fun to watch and it's so entertaining. So that's like the main thing. Like there's many tactics you can do to kind of like, and that's a whole nother podcast that we can talk about if you want to talk about business tactics and online marketing strategy. Like that's we can take that, we can do that one another time. But for this, I would just say create content that people really want to see, solve problems for people, and create something that's very, very shareable.
I love it, and I can't stress enough the idea of knowing who your audience is. And if I could offer my own suggestions on how to figure that out, is first of all, realize what kind of content you're putting out there. So, what are the ideals of the philosophy behind it? What's the actual product? And really imagine who would be interested in it, and put an idea in your head. Then hard check the fact. Use your Google Analytics and see what kind of demographic are you hitting. And it's been crazy to me I think this is, again, the flaw in the education system, because I swear I was told growing up, broaden your audience, hit as many people as possible, money, numbers. And now I'm thinking, I was listening to an interview with Tim Ferriss, and he mentioned this idea of just finding 1,000 true fans.
Yeah.
1,000 people that love you.
Yeah, the tighter the niche, the more money you'll make, the less you'll have to work, and the happier you and your customers will be. And people generally don't think that. They think if I want to like teach drums, I need to just go super broad. I need to teach everything, and that's not the case at all. And so definitely laser target.
And can I ask you what your approach was in the early days to finding your customer? You said you named them. Can you describe like what the customer became to you?
Yeah, well, basically what we found out over time is that a lot of our students are actually, between 30 and 60 years old, and their story is that they played drums when they were 15 or 16 in high school, and then after that they had to go get a real job or whatever because they had to earn money, and they kind of left drumming behind. And now they're married, their kids are older, and they have a little bit more time and a little bit more money, and so they want to kind of get back into it. They have a moment or something that kind of rekindles their passion for the drums. Maybe they go to a party and there's a drum set there, and they get to jam with their friends, and they kind of like they get that feeling back again. And that's their story. And so now that they've got that back, they buy a drum set and they want to get lessons. And because this customer is a little bit older, they don't necessarily want to go to a music store and sign up for lessons, or they don't have a schedule. Like we have a lawyer that takes our lessons. Like many lawyers, we have software engineers, and these people are professionals with very busy schedules. And so they can't schedule a lesson on Tuesday at 3:30 or Tuesday at 6 p.m. because their schedule is so erratic. And so they want something that they can kind of do on demand, but still feel like they're part of a community. Like it's not like they're getting taught by a computer. They still want to feel like there's people behind their computer screen. And I think that's what we've done a good job here at Drumeo is keeping the experience very personal and making them feel like they're part of a community. And if they need help, if they need that personalization, we can give it to them. And so once we figured all that out, like about our customer and who they are and what type of customer and what type of program that they want, we were able to target all the marketing around that. And so if you go to the drumeo.com homepage, you'll see on that page that there's someone in their garage on a computer on a really nice drum set, which is a Yamaha nice drum set with Pisces cymbals. So it's like a $6,000-$7,000 drum set, maybe even more actually. And they're I think 50 years old. That the person there is actually my dad. Fun fact.
Wow.
He was gracious enough to do that, but he's definitely not. He wouldn't consider himself a model. He's one of my inspirations when it comes to business. He's very, very. I call him very, very smart business guy. And but he's kind of like in that demographic, and so we started tailoring our marketing around that, and all the imagery, all the videos, a lot of the lessons. When we talk, we say things like, "Hey, if you're just getting back into this would be great for you," and that kind of resonates with a lot of people.
Interesting, and I'm wondering then, because I asked you earlier rather, about being the student and finding that teacher who doesn't suit you. And now I'm wondering from your point of view, when you finally figured out like what your target audience was, did you ever have a point where you had to turn down a student because you could kind of tell this guy's not going to fit in?
Like online, not necessarily. Like now, because we've been doing it for so long, we're able to become more broad. We have like 60 instructors, and so we're actually trying to widen our demographic now. But in private lessons, I've definitely had to say, hey, it's just not really working here anymore, because what you want to do is not something I can teach, or it's not something I'm comfortable with. And so that happens more in private lessons than online, because we just have such a massive group of instructors that we can pull from.
Right. And I imagine on those one-on-one private lessons with you, when you have one of those students it's not clicking with, am I right to say those are probably the most draining of students and the boringest and the worst to teach?
Yeah. And that's why it's not good for them, and it's not good for you. I'd rather teach less and not take their money. And I've actually had one of my teachers tell me, hey, it's not working out anymore. He said flat out, the lessons are getting kind of stagnant, and I think you're a great player, but I think you'd be more beneficial taking lessons from this guy. And that was totally fine by me. I don't think I was a bad student. It's just we weren't connecting the same as we used to, and it kind of just became something that routine. Like we just went and saw each other every single week and did these lessons, and it was draining on him. And I was paying him like $200 a month, but he was kind enough to say, hey, I'm not really feeling it anymore. And so I think that was very respectable now looking back on that.
Yeah, that's really cool, because I would I know a lot of people in that situation where they're, these are music teachers who they're teaching. A lot of the time it's children who are just there because their parents enrolled them and they said, what instrument do you want to play? I want to play the drums. And they're there, and you could just see the look on the teacher's face. It's just pure torment as the kid is trying to hit them with drumsticks. And I asked myself, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? Is it worth that $200 a month, like you said? Is it really worth it for this much? Like, you're burning a bridge just slowly over time, really, and you're also driving yourself insane.
Yeah, well, there's a quote by Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you follow him, but one of his quotes is, "Stop doing shit that you hate." And that's very true. Like if you don't like it, don't do it. Like no one's forcing you to do it. I know sometimes the money is hard to let go because you're relying on it for car payments or house payments, but at least work towards a solution so you don't have to do that.
Exactly. That's kind of like one of my end goals is to be able to, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. You know what I mean? If I'm not going hell yeah, then no, I don't want to do it. Sorry. It doesn't work out. And the way life is that what people need to realize, this all sounds so great and ideal, and I'm just going to say no to everything for that I don't want to do from now on. And it's just not that simple. It's something you work towards. And I think part of working towards that end goal is understanding that along the way there are going to be many times that you have to do stuff you don't want to do, and it's about recognizing which ones are you doing for the wrong reasons and which ones are you doing for the right reasons.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And can I ask you then, Jared, what are some examples of that grind work that you had to do in the beginning? You probably hated it, but eventually you were able to just stop it.
Well, I hate doing paperwork. So if anyone hands me a form, I'm just like, this one-page form is going to take me a year to get back to you, so you should probably get someone else to do this. I hate doing paperwork. I like doing anything that involves like talking or dealing with people, and that's what I love doing the most. And obviously playing drums is what I love to do. But yeah, in the beginning, like a lot of the administrative kind of tedious tasks were not fun. Like hiring and firing. I don't mind hiring, but firing is not a fun process.
Right.
The whole financial stuff. I think it's good when things are going well, but when financial times are not good, it sucks to have to deal with that kind of stuff. And so I don't like doing that at all. But there's those times like you just have to kind of roll up your sleeves and do it, and know that you're working towards a bigger end goal.
Exactly. I wish I could tell listeners that, you can just say no to anything you don't want to do. And unfortunately for all of us, that's never going to be the case, because it's just a part of life, and it's about making it as tolerable as possible, I think, and putting it in perspective. If you're that music teacher that I know, or the multiple I know that are, you're basically tormenting yourself for $200 a month, I would, and their rationale would be, oh, well, it's the money, it's a student, they have family that they might bring over and stuff. And I think in that specific case, I really encourage people to look at the bigger picture and go, really, is it that much money? Really? Put these things under a lens. Don't just do stuff.
Yeah. And that's like with Drumeo, as we've continued to grow, we have lots of opportunities, and lots of people approach us with this thing that's going to be great. It would be a huge success. But I have to look at it and say, okay, if we do that, that means we're not going to be able to do something else. And so everything you choose to do means you're choosing not to do 10 or 20 or even more other things. And so you have to kind of figure out what your filter is for choosing projects or taking on new students or anything like that, and then move forward using that filter and staying true to it. Because it's so easy to end up doing like 100 things a week that you just don't like doing, and then that's when you really start hating your job and not really enjoying getting up in the morning.
Exactly. And just to segue a little bit here, because I think it's really cool to me to see that it seems like you're the real spearhead of Drumeo. You're the real the thought behind it. Am I wrong there? Are you the one making most of the directional decisions?
Yeah, like in the past 2 years, like I had a business partner named Rick Kettner, and we were business partners for 10 years, and it went great. And after that, he kind of came to me and was like, hey, we should just go do our own things. And so we actually had a guitar side of what we did too. Like we had guitarlessons.com, and
right.
And now he took that and he's doing that. They're operating it very successfully. And me and him still talk all the time, great friends. And I think he's a very, very technical co-founder. And so that's one of the areas that I'm currently missing here at Drumeo. Okay. But when it comes to the direction that we're going and all the strategy, that's definitely one thing that I love to do. Building corporate structure, strategy, building a really solid team of people and creating culture here at my office. Like I have such a great team of people. And I always say if one of my staff ever left, I don't replace anyone. The business just changes. Okay. Everyone is so important here. And so, yeah, it's definitely me. And that's something I love to do.
That's great to hear. I like knowing that people in charge of these things, i.e. setting a direction or a goal, are people who actually love doing, because I think too often the case is you get people who are, maybe they are promoted to a good position in a job where they can make these kind of decisions, but it's not really for them and everyone kind of suffers. But I'm wondering, Jared, how do you're someone who loves to make these decisions, but how do you deal with feedback? Is it a constant game of listening to you and going back and forth with people who might want to share their own directions, or do you turn them out and do you trust your own vision?
Well, when it comes to my staff, or are you talking when it comes to the students or the users actually using
staff? I'm talking specifically from a business point of view here.
Business point of view, yeah. Like I have a kind of a core group of staff here that I always rely on, and I'll bring them in when I have a new idea, and I'll say, hey, what do you think about this? And one of those guys is my brother, who's been with Drumeo now for, oh man, I'm gonna get it wrong, but around 8 years. And another guy's been here almost 10 years, and and I'll bring them in, and they will probably only 50% of the time actually agree with what I'm wanting to do. Yeah, and I love that. Like I do not want people who just suck up and say yes to everything. I much prefer someone who can really be objective and provide a different kind of viewpoint. And so, yeah, that's great. And sometimes I'll take their advice and I won't do the project, or I'll change my mind. But other times I just have to kind of stick to my guns and do what I want. And that's part of owning a business and being an entrepreneur, and is doing that. And you're not always right. Sometimes you're wrong, but that's how you learn, right?
Right. So is it safe to say that your decision-making process, if that's what we want to call it, is it kind of a balance of taking all these hard objective facts that you're being presented with from multiple people and putting them against your gut feeling, or is it one dominates the other?
It's more my gut feeling. Yeah, I'm not like, I don't have analytics to back up every one of my decisions or anything like that. A lot of it's just like, hey, I really, as a drummer and someone who's like, I intimately study the market and what else is out there and what people are saying. I think I'll say this is what we need to do. This is the direction we need to go. And then I'll make that decision just based solely on what I'm feeling and what I think the market needs. That's the majority of the times the way it happens. It hasn't always worked though, man. I've made some huge mistakes, costing us a ton of money, and but I mean, just like drumming, right? And playing music, that's how you learn, is by making those big mistakes.
Exactly. And if you don't mind me asking, this podcast is absolutely obsessed with failure. Could you please go into detail on some of these mistakes? Because like we said at the very beginning, I personally think that mistakes are what make people better. So I don't think it's anything to be embarrassed or ashamed about. If you're willing to share it, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, no problem. There was a time when we were publishing lots of our own DVD packs. We thought, hey, we're kind of good at marketing, and we should also sell other DVD packs. And so we ordered like $20,000 or $30,000 worth of stock, and we had this whole fulfillment center set up in our place, and we started selling these other DVD packs, and we quickly realized that there's another company out there called Amazon. And Amazon they know their shit as well, and so we just could not sell the stuff, and it became like a price war, where in the past what we're used to with our stuff is there's only one place to get it. You can't even really get it on Amazon. And so we don't have that uniqueness, that kind of special sauce anymore. And we ended up just like writing off all the stock. That was a huge failure. Another time, like you're in Canada too, right? You said you're in Toronto?
Yes.
Yeah. So like all of our stuff is processed in U.S. dollars, right? And so sometimes the U.S. dollar is good, and sometimes the U.S. dollar is bad. We were operating business when the U.S. dollar was great, and then when it dropped to where $1 ended up being worth 90 cents Canadian.
Right.
And that really almost put us out of business, because all of our systems, like we basically dropped our revenue by half overnight, and our fixed costs stayed the same. So overnight, it took like a couple months it dropped like a rock at the time. But we almost went out of business. Like I think we borrowed like a bunch of money from someone who was like, now I'm still very grateful to those people for giving us that loan, because they still believe in us even when it was such a hard time. And so that happens all the time, and I think that's part of being an entrepreneur and being in this business and having a team of people that you're responsible for, but that's part of the fun of it, right? And so I've learned more from my failures than from my success.
Exactly. And this idea of these people you're grateful for, it kind of sparked this thing I've been wanting to talk about with you for a bit now, because I remember, we're going back to 2006 again. I remember clicking your videos, and like I said, they would be like one of the first few that would come up if you're searching drum, whatever I was looking for at the time. And the amount of hate, just blind hate, was simply astounding to me. And this is nothing to you personally. This is anywhere on the internet, anywhere on YouTube. And you would click these people pay. I go like, who is this guy? Who's this guy talking all this shit? He must be amazing. You click him, and he probably doesn't have a single video up, and his picture is just the default picture. And you look at all his other comments, and it's all, this guy sucks ass. This is the same thing over and over again. And but this was the early days of kind of like internet community starting to build up. There were some online forums that were big, but never on the scale we've seen today. And so I imagine it must have been a difficult thing to handle haters. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, I call them keyboard warriors. And so, at first, honestly, it was really hard. And like I remember when I first read a bunch of hate, like people were criticizing everything. Like they did research on my background and my family, and they started saying, "Oh, he has no integrity." All this. I'm just like, I was like completely baffled.
Oh my God.
And so it kind of gave me that sick feeling in my stomach, and I did feel like I wanted these people to like me. I really wanted everyone to like me. I thought, why can't these people like me? Why can't I just call them and we talk about it and everything will be great? But then, you quickly realize any time you respond to people like that who are so like have such confirmation bias that you're not going to change their mind. You're not going to change their mind in one conversation, or you're not going to change their mind overnight. And certain people have certain feelings to you, and that's just the way it is. And now when I see it, I'll try and pull some good out of it. Like if someone says, "Oh, you suck. At 4 minutes, you made a huge timing error in that video," I'll go look at that and I'll be like, "Hey, you know what? He's kind of right. He just said it in a really bad way, and now I think he's a bit of a douche because he said it that way." But but a lot of times it's even just they don't have anything good to say or anything nice, and that's still like there's toxic communities out there and there's toxic people, and really just try and avoid them and stay away from them. What's hard is that I see a lot of new students coming out, or new drummers. Like Casey has gotten a lot of bad rap just from people who don't even know him, who haven't even taken the time to like really watch his videos and listen to him talk and hear what he has to say. And he's just like the nicest guy, hardest worker, and just absolutely loves playing drums. And for people to criticize someone,
I apologize again. I found out what the issue is. They're doing construction right next to me right now, and they're probably hitting some kind of line or something that's disrupting the internet every now and then.
All right.
I'm sorry about that.
No problem, man. I don't know where we left off. I was on a bit of a rant.
You know where we were? We were talking about Casey's haters and how the people who don't even know him saying, like, I'm actually shocked to hear, because when I was watching your videos and I'd see the early hate, for me it was like, it was kind of like we said, "Oh, he made a huge mistake at 4-minute mark. This guy sucks." It was that kind of thing. But I don't think I've seen it at what you said, where they would like look up your background information. It's just, oh man, what are these people doing with their time?
Yeah, well, they're trying to discredit you, and when there's like that tribe mentality, like if there's a bunch of people that are all saying, "Oh, this guy sucks," then it's easier for more people to say it, right?
Right.
And it's kind of like a safe place to hate on this person, and that still happens, and it'll probably happen more and more as long as we're continuing to be more and more successful. And I think that's just part of putting yourself out there and being online. You just kind of have to expect it. And so now, like with Casey, I know he looks at it and he is obviously disappointed, but he doesn't let it affect him. Like he's smart enough to know that what he's doing is having more of a positive impact. Like hands down, it's not even close. Like he's doing such a great thing. And same thing with what we're doing here at Drumeo is, I think we're just having such a positive impact on people's lives that I don't let those people bring me down at all.
It actually really reminds me, we had Cletus Selden on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and he's a professional boxer and he's Jewish. So he deals with a ton of hate from the crowds when he comes in, for stupid reasons, just like anyone else gets dealt with hate by anonymous people who would never talk to you one-on-one a chance,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like that kind of person. And he told me that it's all about moving forward and believing in what you're doing, like you said, believing that you're there for a certain reason, and there's always going to be haters, and they have their place, and in some ways maybe they actually fuel you and make you a little bit better. And it's kind of like this acknowledgement. But what I'm wondering with you is, you said at the beginning it was you kind of had that reaction I think a lot of people would have, where it's, why can't they just like me? They don't know the whole story. Well, if I just explain it to them like this, maybe they'll turn around. What clicked with you that made you finally realize it's time to move past them?
I think just like talking about it with people and talking to other people doing the same thing. Like I got to work with a guy named Kobus really early on.
Oh, yeah.
And he's similar to Casey, and they do drum covers, and Kobus has gone on to do lots of other cool things as well. But he had the same thing, and just kind of like getting to talk with other like-minded people, and they're almost like my therapist, and us saying, hey man, did you hear what this guy said? And like, oh yeah, that's totally not true, and you're doing awesome, right? And just really kind of surrounding yourself with people, with positive people that you can relate with in that way. And it's definitely a process. I think anyone who goes and starts putting themselves out there online and receives hate, the first time that happens, it's shocking. Like there's no real easy way to handle it. But yeah, the only thing that works is surrounding yourself with good people, and then just letting time heal.
Exactly. And I think you said it best when you said anyone who's putting themselves out there, it's kind of going to be an imminent thing. I've gotten hate since I started the podcast. No matter, I had people, like the stupidest things too. I had a guy write me a huge detailed post on how I'm an idiot because I didn't know what time zone Seattle was in or something like that. I just wrote it back. I said something like, I'm Canadian, and that's that. It's just, but I think if one of our listeners is someone who's trying to push themselves on any kind of visual medium or a medium that puts yourself out there, you need to expect that hate to come. It's going to happen no matter what, and it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, not at all. It's if anything, you can look at it as in a positive light. I know that's very, very hard to do, but if you're making a big enough splash to allow people to choose a side, and you're somehow being that polarizing, I think it's sometimes good, because if you have someone that hates you that much, you're equally going to have people on the other side that just are super fans, and they're just like the super loyal tribe, and want to follow whatever you do. And so I think you're causing people to make a decision that way isn't always a bad thing, and there's no way that everyone's going to like you.
That's a really interesting way to think about it, how you kind of have a tribe of defenders at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Jared, I had a great time doing this. I don't want to keep you any longer because we've been going, and because I'm worried about connection issues, because they're building a playground here.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, I don't want it to cut out like that again. So I want to thank you so much for this talk. This was great.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And if you ever need anything else, just let me know. I watched or I listened to some of your other podcasts, and I know that you play video games as well. And so we're big into gaming here at Drumeo.
Oh,
so
no way.
We can talk about that as well next time.
Oh, let's do it. I definitely want to do round 2, and we got to explore the business side of things some more too, because you're a genius when it comes to that stuff. Like I've said, I've seen you at work, and I've seen what you've done with Drumeo and freedrumlessons.com, and really with your brand, with Jared Falk, because I almost feel like, in essence, those early Drumeo videos, it was you and one other guy, I think, for the longest time at the most, and even before it was Drumeo, pretty sure it was just you I was seeing on the camera.
Yeah, me, and then I have a Dave Atkinson, who's also here, who's done a lot of the videos, and he's been here for, I think, around almost 10 years now, and so he's been a big part of it, and to this day is a huge part of our community.
Awesome. So yeah, one day I would love to talk to you again, and we can talk gaming, we can talk business, we can talk all kinds of things on this podcast. That's why it's so much fun. So thank you again, Jared, for being on this with me. And can I just ask you, for the listeners who are interested, how can they find out more about you?
Best way to find out more about me is you could just go to my Facebook page, just search for Jared Falk. Twitter, it's Jared_Falk, and then Instagram is Jared Falk Drummer. And so if you just Google my name, all that stuff will come up.
And if they're interested in pursuing drums, where should they find their lessons?
You go to Drumeo.com, and if you go to Drumeo.com/trial, there's a free 30-day trial, and you can kind of try it out. You get a new lesson every single day for 30 days, plus you'll get access to like more than 1,000 hours of previously recorded lessons. And so it's a great way to just figure out if online lessons are for you.
And if I could offer my own testimony for some of Jared's products, I am a drummer myself. I am currently completing my final year in university for music, and I have to say Drumeo's videos are top quality. They are amazing. They will help anyone looking into drums.
Thank you so much, Jared.
Not a problem. Thank you again for being on here, Jared, and you have a great day, man.
All right, see you.
Take it easy.
That's it for today's episode. If you guys like what you heard, follow us on Twitter at _theKspot.net, search for The Knowledge Spot on Facebook or SoundCloud, or check us out at www.thekspot.net. Lastly, if you guys have any questions for me, I plan on doing my own personal Q&A sessions through YouTube, so email me at contact@thekspot.net.